more about the nitrogen cycle.
Really?
Sure do.
You have questions about the nitrogen cycle?
How many times do I have to say it?
You want to learn about the Okay. Yeah, we could talk about the nitrogen cycle.
Finally.
Sure.
My human's kind of thick-headed.
Well, there you have it. Chef Dylan is asking for a talk about the nitrogen cycle. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle. Today's video, we're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is an essential macronutrient for plant function. You'll find it in amino acids and proteins. It's essential in photosynthesis as it's a building block for chlorophyll. You'll find it in DNA. It helps regulate water and nutrient uptake. Molecular nitrogen makes up 78% of the atmosphere. This form of nitrogen cannot be used by most plants and animals. Several ways that nitrogen gets put in a usable form. One of the ways is called atmospheric fixation. Lightning strikes, the heat from the lightning converts it into a usable form. Most of it is done through biological nitrogen fixation. Rain deposits nitrogen into the soil where it gets converted from molecular nitrogen into ammonia and ammonium. These are the types of bacteria that are responsible for making this conversion. We often hear about planting beans and peas to fix nitrogen to the soil. What's interesting is the bean and these plants don't actually do any nitrogen fixing themselves, but they have a symbiotic relationship with a bacteria group. The bacteria gets carbohydrates from the plant, and in turn, the plant gets nitrogen. Most of this nitrogen will actually be returned to the soil after the plant dies. Ammonia needs to be converted. Ammonia oxidizing bacteria takes over and first converts it into nitrite. As we know, nitrite is highly toxic to our fish. It is toxic to some plants and many animals. It must be converted into a more usable form. These are the types of bacteria that are responsible for oxidizing the ammonia into nitrite. The next step is nitrite gets converted into nitrat. Nitrat is a more usable form of nitrogen. These are the types of bacteria that do this conversion. You'll often hear about nitrobacter bacteria as they are present in soil, freshwater, and marine environments. But these other bacteria also play this same role. Once the nitrat is created, it can be assimilated into the plants through the roots and be used for all the things that we talked about in the opening slide. Plants get consumed by different animal species, and these animals create waste nitrogen products. Birds, reptiles, and insects create uric acid. Terrestrial animals create urea, and fish create ammonia. These products get recycled in the recycling program known as ammonification. Basically, these molecules are broken back down into ammonia and re-enter as nitrite again, nitrat, and then can get reused by the plants. The final thing to make this an actual cycle, it has to go back to molecular atmospheric nitrogen. This is called denitrification. Nitrat is converted back to molecular nitrogen in an anaerobic process known as denitrification by a different group of bacteria completing the cycle. Denitrification requires low oxygen anaerobic conditions. Those conditions can be dangerous to plants and our fish. One of the first things that gets converted to is nitrite, and as we know, nitrite is very toxic for our fish. The anaerobic conditions also promote root rot. The next step in denitrification is nitric oxide is created. When nitric oxide is mixed with water and oxygen, it creates nitric acid. Nitric acid is one of the things in acid rain. The next thing it gets converted to is nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is a powerful greenhouse gas. It gets broken back down into molecular nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, and the cycle is completed. In our aquaponic systems, we're really only utilizing part of the nitrogen cycle. We feed our fish. The fish metabolize the proteins into ammonia. The ammonia enters into the nitrogen cycle, creates nitrite, then nitrat, gets taken up into our plants, and eventually we eat the plants. As you can see here, we're trying to avoid the denitrification cycle. Denitrification is going to create this bugger right here, and that's not good. In our organic soil gardens, we are dealing with some natural biological nitrogen conversion, but because our plants grow so quickly, they need to have something else added to the soil in order to get enough nitrogen. We do that in the form of compost and fertilizers. Those organic fertilizers and compost need to go through the ammonification process in order to create a usable nitrogen form. The final type of nitrogen fixation is known as industrial nitrogen fixation. We have factories that combine nitrogen with hydrogen, creating ammonia, and later we take that ammonia and create different nitrogen fertilizers such as nitrat and urea fertilizers. We add those fertilizers to the soil. The nitrat can be directly taken up by the plants. Some of the urea does, but most of it gets broken down in the ammonification process, enters into the biological nitrogen fixating, and eventually becomes nitrat, and it gets assimilated by the plants. What's interesting is the molecules, like the nitrat molecules, whether it's factory made or biologically made, are identical. The big difference is how the molecule was produced. So that's the nitrogen cycle from start to finish, from being in the atmosphere, getting turned into ammonia, getting turned into nitrite, nitrat, gets brought up into our plants. The plants get eaten. It gets recirculated, recycled over and over again until it gets into anaerobic condition, where it gets re-entered back into the atmosphere again as molecular nitrogen, and the cycle starts over. If you got something out of the video, like, share, and subscribe, and have a great day.